Once I am free from him, my life will finally feel right. This is a belief that sits quietly beneath many divorces. Not every divorce, not for every woman, not in every marriage, but often enough that it deserves to be talked about. And if we're honest, this belief isn't limited only to women. Men carry it too. People leave jobs believing the company was the problem. They move cities believing the location was the problem. They end friendships believing the friend was the problem. Human beings have a tendency to look at pain and assume the source of that pain exists outside of themselves. And nowhere is that more visible than in intimate relationships. Because relationships activate parts of us that nothing else can. They expose your fears, your insecurities, your unmet needs, your childhood wounds, and your unconscious expectations. And when all of these things are activated all at once, it becomes very easy to conclude my suffering is coming from this person. So when divorce happens, you become convinced that removing the person will remove the pain. And for a while, it feels true. After separation, you feel tremendous relief. Suddenly, the arguments stop. The tension disappears. The emotional weight is lifted. There is freedom. There is space. There is a welcome silence. You get a chance to reinvent yourself. You may be seen as becoming more confident, more social, more alive. Perhaps you start working out, you begin traveling, you make new friends, ones that are all your own. You begin exploring parts of yourself that were forgotten. And if you're the husband watching this happen, it can feel devastating because it looks like proof. Proof that you were the problem. Proof that she's happier without you. Proof that the marriage was holding her back. But what most people fail to understand is that the relief is not the same as healing. Relief simply means the trigger has been removed. But healing would mean the latent pattern has been dissolved. And those are two very different things. If someone has a splinter in their finger and you stop them from touching the splinter, it may bring relief. But the splinter is still there. And in spite of leaving the marriage, the wounds are still intact. And this is where spirituality offers a perspective that modern culture often misses. Because from a consciousness perspective, people do not enter our lives randomly. Relationships are mirrors. They are classrooms. They're assignments. In many ways, they are karmic agreements. Not punishment, not fate, not some cosmic sentence. Simply opportunities for evolution. Opportunities to see parts of yourself that you could only see when you're alone. The person you marry often becomes the mirror that reflects your deepest unconscious programming. And what most people call incompatibility is sometimes two nervous systems repeatedly activating each other's unresolved wounds. One person fears abandonment, the other person fears being controlled. One person needs reassurance, the other person needs space. One pursues, one withdraws. And eventually, both become convinced that the other person is the problem. But from a consciousness perspective, neither person is the problem. The programming is, the inner operating system is, the unconscious patterns are. And the marriage simply becomes the stage where those patterns can finally be seen. And this is why many people experience a honeymoon period after divorce. The stage has changed, the actors have changed, the scenery has changed, but the script remains exactly the same. For a while, the novelty hides it. A new relationship feels exciting. A new life feels liberating. A new identity feels empowering. But eventually, consciousness always reveals what's remaining unresolved. The same fears return, the same insecurities return, the same relationship dynamics return, the same feelings of not being understood, not being appreciated, not being enough, not being free. The faces change, the patterns don't. Because the pain was never created by the marriage only activated it. That distinction is incredibly important to understand. Most people spend years trying to change their circumstances while never changing their own consciousness. And then they wonder why the same experiences keep repeating. Different patterns, but the same pain. Different city, same emptiness. Different career, same frustration. Because karma doesn't care where you go. It follows your consciousness until the lesson is learnt. Now, I know this can be a very difficult idea because when marriages end, at times they do because of real problems. Sometimes they're very serious problems, and there may be things that absolutely need to change. Sometimes separation is definitely the healthiest path. My intention is not about convincing anyone to stay in an unhealthy relationship, but it's about understanding what actually creates lasting freedom. Because if your freedom depends on another person disappearing, then it isn't freedom. True freedom occurs when the trigger can exist but no longer controls you. That is healing. That is mastery. That is awakening. And that is increasing your consciousness. And this is where many people misunderstand what divorce is really showing them. Most people see divorce as an ending. I see it as a spotlight, a giant spotlight, illuminating everything that was hidden, everything that was avoided, everything that was buried underneath years of coping. The divorce itself is not the lesson. The lesson is what the divorce reveals. And most people respond to that spotlight in one of two ways. First is blame. Everything becomes the other person's fault. The second is shame. Everything becomes their own fault. Neither response creates healing because both responses keep consciousness trapped in the same polarity. Blame says the problem is outside of me. Shame says the problem is me. But awareness shows the problem is the pattern. And that's where transformation begins. For the person who left, the invitation is to ask, what was this relationship trying to teach me about myself? Not my partner, but about me. What fears was it revealing? What wounds was it activating? What unconscious beliefs was it exposing? And for the person who was left, the invitation is exactly the same. Not how do I get them back? Not when will they regret leaving me? But what is this experience revealing about me? Because whether reconciliation happens or not, the deeper purpose remains unchanged. Life is always attempting to evolve your consciousness. Always. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every disappointment, every ending. And the people who emerge the strongest from a divorce are not the ones who prove they were right. They are not the ones who get revenge. They are not the ones who wait for validation. but they are the ones who use the experience as a doorway into self awareness, a doorway into healing, a doorway into awakening, because eventually you realize something profound. The relationship was never your prison. The unconscious patterns were. The marriage was simply where they became visible. And once you see that, something changes. You stop obsessing about what your ex is doing. You stop wondering whether they are happier. You stop needing them to fail in order for you to feel okay. You stop needing them to return in order to feel valuable. And you start focusing on the only thing that you truly have power over: your own consciousness, your own healing, your own inner operating system. Because when your consciousness changes, your reality changes. Not because the world changed, but because the lens through which you experience the world changed. And that is the deeper truth most people miss. The goal was never to escape the mirror. The goal was to understand what the mirror was trying to show you. Because until the lesson is learned, life will keep sending new mirrors. But once the lesson is integrated, karma dissolves, the pattern ends, and for the first time, you actually become free. Not because someone left, not because someone stayed, but because you finally awakened to yourself.